How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf 14. Daf Yudal, Daf 14 of Masechta Sanhedrin. Masechta Daf Yudal there's some pretty interesting stuff on Daf Yudal. The most interesting of which, in my opinion, is about smicha. Smicha. Super interesting, right? Nowadays, smicha be'etzem means that smicha is basically, nowadays it's like a degree of sorts, right? It's like, you can become you go to school, you become a lawyer or something. You can go to school, you become a rabbi. It's a certification. You take a test, you get certified as a rabbi. It means, right, that you're now ordained as a rabbi. I'm not making light of that in any to any degree, just in case it sounded that way. But once upon a time, smicha was, and I don't know exactly why it somehow got broken, but be'etzem smicha was just meant, Moshe Rabbeinu leaned on Yoshua, and that he kind of gave smicha to Yoshua. And then Yoshua gave smicha to like the other Zakanim, and there was an unbroken chain. We're going to see in the Gemara, even Reb Zera received smicha. So even there were Amoraim that were still had this unbroken chain of teacher to student going back to Moshe Rabbeinu. But we don't have it anymore. One of the halachas we're going to learn is that smicha has to be done in Eretz Yisrael. So anybody who gets smicha, does gets ordained as a rabbi in the United States or something, for sure that's not smicha, right? It has to be done in Eretz Yisrael. But I don't know, why couldn't the Arizal have had smicha? What happened between Reb Zera in, I don't know, when was Reb Zera alive? Maybe 200, maybe 300, 400, year 300, 400 or something probably. And the Arizal, when was the Arizal? Probably maybe 1500 or something. So what happened in those 1300 years? I don't know. Why weren't we able to just keep that chain going? Was there nobody in Eretz Yisrael? I don't know. Anyways, maybe. That could be, right? You have Rishonim who came to Eretz Yisrael, like the Ramban came to Eretz Yisrael, for example. When he was there, imagine, was there anybody on his level in Eretz Yisrael at the time? If the answer is no, then that might explain what happened to smicha, that there weren't people on that level around anymore. Anyways, we're going to talk about smicha, which, is an interesting, in my opinion, is an interesting sugya, but we're also going to talk about other things as well. Smicha is just one part of today's daf. Okay, let's get started. We have work to do, and Yud Gimel Amud Beis, because yesterday was very complicated and required much effort. So we just kind of stopped when the hard part ended, and we're going to pick up from there. So Yud Gimel Amud Beis, about a third of the way through the Amud at the two dots, Smichas Zikanim. Now we had said in explaining the Mishnah that Smichas Zikanim is referring to the Par Helim Dover Shel Tzibur, that if there was a psak that something is mutter, for example, I know something on Shabbos, you're allowed to do something on Shabbos, and it turns out that it's actually asur. But because of the psak that it was mutter, everybody was assuming that it was mutter. Turns out it's asur. So you don't just bring a regular korban chatas. Rather, there's something called par helam davar shel tzibur, right? I think it's a type of korban chatas that be'etzim is brought in such a scenario when everybody kind of made this kind of mistake. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that this is the focus of Masechta Horayos. Masechta Horayos, we're going to learn comes after Masechta Avodah Zarah. It might be Adius first or something, but yeah. So that's a parallel davar shel tzibur. In our family, Horayos is a very special Masechta because my grandfather, who was part of Babylon Talmud, okay, Mamash's Yortzeit must be any day now. His Yortzeit must be any day now. And so he started learning that for Yomi at Horius. That's what they were up to when he started. So every time Horius would come around, that's when Zayda would make a Siyum Hashas. Anyways, we need to get started, but this is what we're talking. We're talking about Par Davar Shel Tzibur. So you would do Smicha, you would lean on the head of the Par Helem Davar Shel Tzibur. Now, so Smicha Zikenim. So Tana Ban the opposite of V'samchu Ziknei. Okay, so when it says, so what does the pasuk say? It says V'samchu Ziknei Eides Yideim Al Rosh HaPar Lefnei Hashem V'shachat Es HaPar Lefnei Hashem. Okay, so V'samchu Ziknei Yachu Ziknei Ashuk. Is it possible we're talking about just like non-Sanhedrin elders? Tamlomar Eda. It says Eda is referring to Sanhedrin. Eda Yachol Katne Eda. Okay, maybe it's Sanhedrin Kitana. Tamlomar Ha Eda. The Eda Miuchadin Shebe Eda. The special Edas. Which is we're talking about the Sanhedrin Gedola. V'chamehin. How many of the Sanhedrin Gedola are required for smicha on the Par Davar Shel Tzibur? V'samchu shnayim ziknei shnayim. Well, v'samchu is plural, so that's minimum 2. Shnayim, okay. Ziknei shnayim. Ziknei is plural, so another minimum 2. So we're talking about 4. Vein bezin shakel. Of course, you can't have an equal bezin. Mosifin alein alem od echad. So we add a 5th. Harikan chamisha de Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is that 5 such judges from the Sanhedrin Gedolah. Rabbi Shimon Omer says, Rabbi Shimon, Ziknei Shnaim. No, Ziknei is 2. And then Ve'en Bezdin Shakol, you can't have an even Bezdin, Mosifin Alein Od Echad, so we add a 3rd. Harikan Shlosha, that is 3. Rabbi Shimon Ksiv V'samchu. What about Rabbi Shimon? What about V'samchu? Right? It says V'samchu Ziknei. So Rabbi Yehuda says, okay, V'samchu is 2, Ziknei is 2. Rabbi Shimon seems to be ignoring V'samchu. Why? What's up with V'samchu? Ha'omim baile legufe. Well, according to Rabbi Shimon, V'samchu is needed to teach V'samchu, to teach that they do smicha, that they lean on the head of the animal, of the cow. For Rabbi Yehuda, legufe lo tzarich. Rabbi Yehuda says, I actually don't need V'samchu to teach that they lean on the head of the cow, because it could have just said Ziknei ha'eda yedeim al rosh hapar. It doesn't, if we just dropped the word v'samchu, I would already know that you do smicha. If it just said Ziknei ha'eda es yedeim al rosh hapar, that would have been enough. I would know that they do smicha. So if that's the case, why does it say v'samchu if it's not necessary to teach me an additional 2 judges? The imkain to lo asi v'samchu lidrasha, that says Rabbi Yehuda, if v'samchu was to be what was not to teach me an additional 2 judges, well then lichtav, just drop it. Just lichtav, just write Ziknei eda yedeim arosh apar, that the elders of the Sanhedrin Gedolah put their hands be'etzim on the head of the cow, and that means that they would lean on it. So I don't need v'samchu. Why is v'samchu there to teach me an additional 2 judges? Reb Shimon disagrees and says we do need v'samchu to teach me smicha, because Reb Shimon would say iksiv achi, if it would say so, i.e. if it would not say v'samchu, well have amina mai al b'samuch. I would have thought to say when it says ziknei ha'eda yedeim al rosh apar, what does al mean? It means near the head of the cow, but not necessarily on the head of the cow. Rabbi Yehuda gomer rosh me'ola. Rabbi Yehuda says meh. It says rosh here by Par Davar Shel Tzibur, and it says rosh by korban ola. Just like by korban ola, it says v'sam. Right? What does it say? It says by yismoch es yoda of olav. By no, wrong pasuk. V'samach yodo al rosh ha'ola. There you go. So by ola it says rosh. There too, and there it's v'samach yado al rosh ha'ol. So, so therefore, I would not say al is b'samuch. I would say al. So even as you said by Par Davar Shel Tzibur yedeim al rosh apar, I would know smicha. Just like by it says rosh here, it says rosh by ola. Over there, it's smicha on the head. Here, it's also smicha on the head. I don't need v'samchu. It's to teach me an additional 2 judges. Reb Shimon lo gomer rosh me'ola. Reb Shimon does not have the tradition of that Gezerah Shava, and therefore he does not learn out the Gezerah Shava between Parlam Davar Shel Tzibor and Ola, and therefore I need V'samchu to teach me that you actually lean on the head of the cow. And therefore it's not teaching me about judges, it's teaching me that you need to lean on the cow. Zikne teaches me 2 judges, and you add a third according to Reb Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda does learn the Gezerah Shava, and therefore he does not need V'samchu to teach me that you actually have to lean on the head of the cow. Therefore V'samchu could teach me an additional 2 judges. V'samchu is 2, Zikne is 2. You have to add an additional one to make it an odd number, and you are left with 5 according to Rabbi Yehuda. Okay. This Seder, so we have machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda says 5 judges for Parlam Davar Shel Tzibor, and Rabbi Shimon says 3. Now, Zok the Gemara says the Gemara, Tana, Smicha v'Smicha Zikenim begimel. Smicha and Smichas Zikenim is begimels with 3. So now Smicha Zikenim we said is Parlam Davar Shel Tzibor. So then what's Smicha? My Smicha Zikenim. What is Smicha and what's Smicha Zikenim? So we know that Smicha Zikenim is Parlam Davar Shel Tzibor. So with regard to Smicha, Rabbi Yochanan Mismach Saveh, says Rabbi Yochanan, it is talking about giving somebody Smicha, ordaining a rabbi. Abai Yosef. Abai says to Rav Yosef, Mismach Saveh b'shlosh minol. And how do we know that ordaining a rabbi needs to be done with 3? I think in this case it would probably be 3 ordained rabbis. I think that's the point, that you need 3 ordained rabbis in order to ordain another rabbi. How do we know so? How do we know that? If we're going to say, well, because by Moshe Rabbeinu giving smicha to Yoshua, it says Vayismoch Yodav Olav. Vayismoch Yodav Olav, that Moshe Rabbeinu leaned on Yoshua. Okay, but then just like Moshe did it alone, so then shouldn't 1 be enough for ordaining rabbis? Why 3? And if you can say, well, Moshe represented the entire Sanhedrin of 71. Okay, if that's the case, so then ordaining rabbis should require 71. Where does 3 come from? Kasha. The Gemara says Taka. It's a good question. Where does 3 come from? Amalei Rav Acha Brei the Rav Ashi says Rav Acha Brei over to Rav Ashi biyod mamish samchinle. Oh, kivaldi. So Rav Acha Brei the Rav asks Rav Ashi, what exactly is the deal with ordaining rabbis? Right. So we know that the pasuk says that Moshe Rabbeinu actually leaned on Joshua. Is that how ordaining rabbis works? Even post that, like we're going to be seeing Tanoim and Amoraim were ordaining each other. Or whatever, ordaining. Were they also leaning on them? Like, what were they doing? Amar le Sarvashi responds, Samchinan le bishmo. Kari le Rebbe v'yaveh le Rishus le Beit Din Knossos. No, you don't, other than Moshe Rabbeinu and Yoshua, you don't have to lean on the person, on the recipient, on the musmach, on the nismach, I guess. You don't need to lean on them. Rather, Samchinan le bishmo. I wonder if this is like samchut. Samchut is like authority. We give him the authority in name. Korele Rebbe. You say, okay, Rabbi Ruvain, v'yayvile rishus lebein dinei knossos, and you give him permission to judge cases involving fines, knossos, fines. Okay, that's what it means to get ordained. Rabbi Ruvain, you can now judge fines. V'chad lo samich. And is that really so, however, that one person cannot ordain? You have to have 3 people in order to ordain? Is that really true that you need 3? V'chad lo samich, 1 doesn't work? V'amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. What says Rav Yehuda Amar Rav? Bram zchor oso ha'ish lotov. Remember the following person for good. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava Shmo. And his name is Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. Friends, Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava was one of the Asara Haruge Malchus. We are going to hear his story now. She'il malehu, if not for Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, the laws of fines would have been forgotten. What do you mean they would have been forgotten? Well, we can always just learn them. I mean, I guess not at that point. It was still Torah Shabbal Peh. Things weren't written down yet. So, I mean, I feel like it's not a crazy question. Like, yeah, they could have been forgotten. But anyways, the Gemara seems to think that, they wouldn't have been forgotten. We would have still been able to learn them. Okay. However, there would be no more judging cases of fines. Which is interesting, because again, if we don't have smicha nowadays, I'd imagine that then we can no longer judge cases of fines anymore. But as far as the Gemara was concerned, we're saying that Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava saved the day. If not for Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, there would have been no more smicha, and if there's no more smicha, then there's no judging of cases of fines. Shepam achaz gozer malchus harishah gzeira al Yisrael. Because one time the evil kingdom, I guess the Romans, decreed an evil decree on the Yidden. Shekol hasomech yeharig. That anybody who ordains will be killed. V'chol hanismach yeharig. Anybody who gets ordained will be killed. V'ir shesomchin ba techariv. And the city in which the ordination ordinated will be destroyed. And any of the sort of, how do you define tchum? Like kind of like the outskirts, I guess? The tchum, the vicinity, maybe you could say, in which the ordination ordinated, so that will be uprooted. Ma'asa Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. So what did Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava do in order to ordain rabbis, but also try to avoid a scenario of like destroying cities and stuff? So he went and he placed himself, he went between two very large mountains. Between two very big cities. Okay, fine. Ubein shnei tchumei Shabbos, between two different tchums, so it wouldn't be in any tchum, so no tchum would be, no vicinity would be uprooted. Ben Usha the Shvarom, between the city of Usha and the city of Shvarom. V'somach sham chamisha zikenim, and there Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava ordained 5 rabbis. Ve'eluhen, and these are them: Reb Meir, Reb Yehuda, and Reb Shimon, Reb Yossi, Reb Elazar ben Shamua, Reb Avi Mosef Reb Nechemya. These were students of Rabbi Akiva, and they received smicha. They received smicha from Reb Yehuda ben Bava. They received smicha from Reb Yehuda ben Bava. But they got caught. They got caught. The Romans discovered this ceremony. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava says, my sons, run for it. Amrulo, they said to Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, Rebbe, maite alecho, but what about you? Amrulo, and he says to them, Harini mutu lifneim, I am placed before them, before the enemies, ke'evan she'ein lo hofchim, like a stone that nobody can move and turn over. Amru, they said, Lo zaz misham ad shenatzu bo shloshmeos lunvios shel barzel, and the Romans, Yimach Shmom, they pierced Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava with 300 spears of iron. And they made him like a sieve. He was just pierced through and through. And that is how Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava was martyred as one of the Asar Ruga Malchus. But because of his sacrifice, smicha continued. Reb Meir, Reb Shimon, Reb Yossi, Reb Yehuda, Reb Nechemia, Reb Elazar, these great Tanoim, they received smicha and they were able to pass it on, as we're about to see, that there were, the subsequent generations had smicha as well because of the fact that smicha continued. But the question is that Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava seems to have been by himself, not with three. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, Achrini Avu Ba'adei. So we say, no, Taka, there were others there as well. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava was not alone in ordaining. Achrini Avu Ba'adei. Ve'hai Dilo Choshevu, the reason why we didn't mention the others, Mishum Kvod Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, out of honor of Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava was Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, so Keilu, he was the focus. But there were two others with him. Reb Meir, Reb Yehuda, Reb Meir. Now, when it comes to Reb Meir, Reb Yehuda ben Bava Samche, 1 second, is that really the case that Reb Yehuda was ordained? Oh, I'm sorry. Is it the case that Reb Meir was ordained by Reb Yehuda ben Bava? V'omer Rabba bar Bechana, Omer b'Yechanan, Kol Omer Reb Meir lo samcho Reb Akiva in Elatoe. Anybody who thinks that somebody other than Rabbi Akiva ordained Reb Meir, meaning Reb Meir was most certainly ordained by Reb Akiva. And if you think otherwise, you are mistaken. Samche Reb Akiva v'lo kiblo, Samche Reb Yehuda ben Bava v'kiblo. Well, the answer is that you're both right. Is that both are correct. Yes, Reb Akiva initially ordained Reb Meir, but he was still very young, and therefore it wasn't accepted. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava then ordained Reb Meir a second time when he was older, when he was an adult, and it was then accepted. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, says Rabbi Yehuda ben Levi, this smicha, ordination, I think is appropriate here. Ordaining, I think it's ordination. I don't know. Ein smicha b'chutzlaretz. This ordination cannot take place in chutzlaretz. It must take place in Eretz Yisrael. My ein smicha. What does that mean? That there's no smicha? If it means that you can't judge cases of fines in chutzlaretz, that is not true. You technically can judge cases of fines in chutzlaretz. Just you would need people who have smicha from Eretz Yisrael to do the judging. We learn in the Mishnah, Sanhedrin noheges bein ba'aretz bein b'chutzlaretz. A Sanhedrin, whether in Eretz Yisrael or in chutzlaretz, meaning anything that they could do in Eretz Yisrael, if they happen to be in chutzlaretz, they could do that there too. So technically speaking, cases of fines can be judged in chutzlaretz. You'll just need musmachim. You'll just need people with smicha. What it means is that we do not ordain in chutzlaretz. Ordination must take place in Eretz Yisrael. Pshita somchin b'chutzlaretz v'nismachin ba'aretz aminu telo. Okay, so obviously, we said that ordination cannot take place in chutzlaretz, meaning if the somech and the nismach, the ordinator and the ordinatee, if they're both in chutzlaretz, it doesn't work. Well then, certainly if the ordinator is in chutzlaretz and the ordinatee is not even with him, he's in Eretz Yisrael, certainly that would not work. If they're together in the same place, it doesn't work. Certainly if they're separate, it won't work. But what if it's fakert? Because we know that you can ordain in Eretz Yisrael. So if the somech and the nismach are both in Eretz Yisrael, so you can ordain. So then, but what about if the somech is in Eretz Yisrael, but the nismach is in chutzlaretz? Can somebody with smicha in Eretz Yisrael, because after all we said, all smicha is you say, okay, Rabbi Ruvain, you could judge Dinei Knossos now. So does Rabbi Ruvain have to be with him in Eretz Yisrael? Or maybe he could be in Bavel right now. And you just need somebody in Eretz Yisrael to make that proclamation that Rabbi Ruvain can now judge Dinei Knossos. Rabbi Ruvain from Baghdad can now judge Dinei Knossos. Maybe that's okay. What's the halacha? So Toshmat Rabbi Yechanan, who of course was in Eretz Yisrael, have mitztayer. He was felt chaval. Have a mitztayer. Olay to Rav Shemin bar Abba to Lavagabayu dilimismache. Rav Shemin bar Abba was not with him. I think the point is that he was in Chutz La'aretz, but he was not with Rabbi Yochanan, and therefore, because he was not with Rabbi Yochanan in Eretz Yisrael, he was unable to ordain Rav Shemin bar Abba. Meaning, so implying that that they would have to be together. You can't have the Somech in Eretz Yisrael and the Nismach in Chutz La'aretz. They would have to be together. So. And what's interesting for me also, as part of our kind of discussion here contextually, is that, so already Rabbi Yochanan, who was an Amora, had smicha, and he was being somech others. Rabbi Shimon ben Zerud, v'chad de'imei, umanu Rabbi Yenisim ben Achmai, v'amri lo Rabbi Yenisim ben Achmai, v'chad de'imei, umanu Rabbi Shimon ben Zerud. Chad dehava gabayu samchu. So one of them, either Rabbi Yenisim ben Achmai or Reb Shimon ben Zerud, unclear which one. One of them was with Reb Yechanan, so Reb Yechanan gave him smicha. And the one that wasn't with Reb Yechanan did not receive smicha. So you would have to be there. Okay, the somech and the nismach would have to be together. Reb Chanina, Reb Hishaya have a mishtakid Reb Yechanan lemismachinu. Reb Yechanan really wanted to give smicha to Reb Chanina and Reb Hushaya. Lo av mistayeh, most of it just it wasn't working out. Havakot mitztar tuva, and Reb Yechanan was upset about it. He felt bad. Amrulei, but Reb Chanina and Reb Hushaya said to Reb Yechanan, Lo nitztar mar, don't worry about it, because the fact of the matter is, the enemy the base Eli koasinon, we come from the household of Eli. The Amr of Shmuel ban Nachman, usually it's ban Nachmani. Amr B'Yenisin says of Shmuel ban Nachman, Amr B'Yenisin, Minayin she'ein nismachon leveis Eli. How do we know that there are no ordained rabbis from the descendants of Eli? Shenemar lo yiyeh zaken beveischa kol hayomim, that there will not be anybody old in your house all of the days. My zaken, what does it mean zaken? Ilim is zaken mamash. If it literally means old, well, I know that from a different pasuk. Everyone's going to die young. What's this zaken? It means that they will not be ordained rabbis, and that's why it was not working out for Yochanan to ordain Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Hushaya, meaning at the end of the day it couldn't work out anyways because they come from the household of Eli and they may not receive ordination. Interesting. Okay. Reb Zera Ava mitamer probably mila mismechei. What's the bay? Yeah, mila mismechei. Reb Zera was avoiding getting ordained. The Omar Reb Elazar, because Reb Elazar said, "La'olam ave kabel v'kayim." Look, if you keep a low profile, you'll survive better. It's better to keep a low profile. Keeping a high profile, becoming a rabbi, a public figure, because tsaris. It's better to keep a low profile. So if Reb Zera was kind of like he was avoiding getting ordained because he's like, my life is good. I don't, keeping a low profile is better. I'm happy to keep a low profile. But Kevon the Shama Leha the Amr Belazar, when he heard something else, the Belazar said, "In Adam oil legdula elam kin mechad leal klavenesav." But when he heard that Rabbi Elazar also says that for a person to rise to greatness, it means that he has been forgiven for all of his sins. So then he realized, wait, I actually do want to get smicha, because if I'm getting smicha and I'm rising to greatness, then I will have forgiveness more for my sins. And Reb Zera, that sounded enticing to Reb Zera. When they ordained Reb Zera, they sang for him the following: Lo kav lo srak lo pirchos, not like eyeliner and srak, I think is for what, like the cheeks and stuff? Yeah, for your face. Pirchos is for your hair. All sorts of makeup. Even without makeup, Reb Zera is a very beautiful fellow. Kisamchua l'Reb Ami v'Reb Asi, when they ordained Reb Ami and Reb Asi Sharlu Achi, they sang the following: Kol Mindain, Kol Mindain. Everybody like these. Everybody, right? If there are others like Reb Ami and Reb Asi, Smochu Lanu. So ordain them. We want more ordained rabbis like Reb Ami and Reb Asi. Lo tismechu lana, but do not ordain for us. Lo misarmitin, not misarmitin. Lo misarmisin, and not misarmisin. V'amila, some say lo machmisin, not machmisin. Lo misur misin, and not misur misin. I don't remember what those are. Bunch of nudniks. Rabbi Bo kiava osim mesifto levei keser. Rabbi Bo, when he would go from the base, now Rabbi Bo was a wealthy person, a respected person, as we're going to see. When he would come from the Beis HaMedrash to the Caesar's house, he was able to go to the Caesar. They would welcome him in. Nafki matronisa de Beit Caesar, the matrons of the Caesar would come out to Rabbi Bo, and they would sing to him, Rabba Da'ame, what does Rashi say? Rabba Da'ame, Nosi Ba'amov, the leader of his nation, Madbarnu de Umse, also I guess the leader of his people. Butzina de Nahora, the bright light. Brichmasiach l'shalom, may your coming be blessed. L'shlam, in peace. Azoy. Givaldi. That was the whole sugya of smicha. That's very interesting, in my opinion. Now we are moving on to Egla Arufa. Egla Arufa, of course, is that you find a corpse and you don't know, who killed him. So we basically measure the closest city, and then we bring a calf and we break its neck. All right. Egla Arufa Arifas Egla B'Shlosha. That Egla Arufa is with 3. Again, we see it's Machlekes Reb Shimon and Reb Yehuda. Reb Yehuda says 5. Reb Shimon says 3. Tana Bana the Rabbi start V'yotzu Zikeinecha V'Shovtecha. It says by Egla Arufa. It says V'yotzu Zikeinecha. What does the pasuk say? V'yotzu Zikeinecha V'Shovtecha Umadadu Ela Arim Asher Sviva Sechalo. So Tana Bana V'yotzu Zikeinecha V'Shovtecha. Zikeinecha Shnaim, Shovtecha Shnaim. So Zikenecha is 2, Shovtecha is 2, so that's already 4. You can't have an even number in a bezdin, so you add another one, 5. Reb Yehuda says, we're talking about 5 judges for Egla. Reb Shimon Omer says, Reb Shimon, Zikenecha Shnaim. Zikenecha is 2, and that's it. You can't have an even number, so you add a third. Harikan Shlosha, so we're talking about 3. Machlekes Reb Yehuda and Reb Shimon, 5 versus 3, similar to what we had earlier with Smichas Zikenim. Reb Shimon and like we asked with Smichas Zikenim, what is Reb Shimon? Reb Shimon seems to be ignoring a word, right? Zikenecha v'shovtecha. Reb Shimon's only focusing on Zikenecha. What about v'shovtecha? I need Shovtecha to teach me that these judges come from the Sanhedrin Gedola. Rabbi Yehuda miziknei zikenecha nafka. Rabbi Yehuda says, well, I would know that already from, it could have just said ziknei, but it says zikenecha to teach me that they have to come from a Sanhedrin Gedola. Rabbi Shimon responds, that's not enough. Look, if it would just say ziknei, I would think non-Sanhedrin rabbis. So because Rahman is zikenecha, therefore it says zikenecha, and therefore they have to be Sanhedrin rabbis. But v'iksiv zikenecha avmina Sanhedrin ketana. But from zikenecha alone, I would have thought from a Sanhedrin ketana, because Rahman v'shovtecha mimiyuchad sheb'shovtecha. And therefore says Reb Shimon, zikenecha is not enough. I need v'shovtecha to teach that. Zikenecha v'shovtecha, to teach that we're talking about not just Sanhedrin Ketana, but a Sanhedrin Gedola. So v'shovtecha is needed to teach me that we're talking about Sanhedrin Gedola. That's what it's needed for. And therefore only Zikenecha is available to learn 2. And then Aim Beis and Shakal, so you add a third. For Rabbi Yehuda, Whereas Rabbi Yehuda, how does he know from the Sanhedrin Gedola? Gomer ziknei mi v'samchu ziknei ha'eda. Well, it says here v'yatzu zikenecha v'shovtecha, and it says by where we learned earlier by parim davar shel tzibur smicha zikenim. It says v'samchu ziknei ha'eda as the name. So it says ziknei in both places. Be'etzim malal miyuchadin shebe'eda av ka miyuchadin shebezikenecha. Just like over there by smichas zikenim, we're talking about Sanhedrin Gedola. So here also by Egla Rufa, we're talking about Sanhedrin Gedola. Iyoliv leiliv kula me'asim. Okay, but one second, Rabbi Yehuda, if you're learning out the Gzeira Shava, if in fact you have a tradition for Gzeira Shava between Smichas Zikenim and Egla Arufa, well then why do you need Zikenecha v'Shoftecha at all? Just say, we have a Gzeira Shava. We know that by Smichas Zikenim, Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is we're talking about 5 of the Sanhedrin Gedola. So the same thing should apply to Egla Rufa. Why do I need Zikenecha v'Shoftecha b'chlal? Zikenecha v'Shoftecha lomali. Why do I need Zikenecha v'Shoftecha b'chlal? So rather scratch that. No, there isn't actually a Gezerah Shava. Now Reb Shimon has a good point, which is Zikenecha would only get me so far as Sanhedrin Ketana, and therefore Reb Shimon argues I need V'Shoftecha to teach me that Taka, we're not talking about Sanhedrin Ketana, we're talking about Sanhedrin Gedola. So the Gemara says, Ein achinami. Rabbi Yehuda also agrees that Shoftecha is to teach Sanhedrin Gedola. Where am I? So Ela Vav V'Shoftecha L'Minyana. Rather, you're right. According to Rabbi Yehuda, V'Shoftecha is needed to teach Sanhedrin, that the judges come from Sanhedrin Gedola, but the actual Vav of V'Shoftecha, the Vav is where, right, the additional, right, the Vav and is coming to add another 2 judges. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's Zikenecha is 2 judges, and then the Vav is to add another 2 judges, and that's how he gets 4. Rabbi Shimon Vav lo darish, whereas Rabbi Shimon doesn't learn out anything from the Vav, and all he has is Zikenecha is 2. Okay? Fine. Then you have to add a 3rd set, it's an odd number. But affect the Gemara, if we're learning out from Zikenecha 2, right, so then also from V'yatzu, we should learn out another 2. Umadadu, we should learn out another 2. Right, Al-Me'ata V'yatzu Shnaim, Umadadu Shnaim. Rabbi Yehuda Hare Tisha, according to Rabbi Yehuda who says 5, really it should be 9. Rabbi Shimon Shiva, according to Rabbi Shimon who says 3, really it should be 7. No, you need V'yatzu and Umadadu for the following price. V'yatzu, Hein V'lo Shluchan. They need to go out. These judges from the Sanhedrin Gedola need to go out, not their emissaries. Umadadu, and they measure Shafilu Nimtza Be'al lawyer, even if it's obvious which city it is closer to. Tzarich Lasok B'Medina, they still must measure. It's part of the thing. Part of the Egla Arufa procedure is measuring, even if it's obvious what the closest city is, you still must measure. Now, says the Gemara, Masnisin de lo ki aitana. That our Mishnah, that has this machlokas between Reb Yehuda and Reb Shimon, about are we talking about 5 judges or are we talking about 3 judges, is unlike Reb Lezer ben Yaakov. Masnisin de lo ki aitana, the Tana Reb Lezer ben Yaakov, says Reb Lezer ben Yaakov, v'yatzu zikenecha v'shoftecha. When it says v'yatzu zikenecha v'shoftecha, zikenecha zo Sanhedrin. Okay, Zikenecha is a reference to the Sanhedrin. We're going to see in a second, essentially that it means the Sanhedrin Gedola. But anyways, okay. V'shovtecha ze melech v'koyin gadol. When it says v'shovtecha, when it says v'yatzu Zikenecha, v'shovtecha Zikenecha is the Sanhedrin, and shovtecha is both the king, that the king also needs to participate, v'koyin gadol, and the high priest must participate in the Egla Arufa procedure as well, according to Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov. Melech dichsev, how do you know that V'shovtecha refers to a melech? Dichsev, melech b'mishpat, yamid aretz. Kohen gadol, I don't know Kohen gadol, that Shovtecha refers to Kohen gadol. Dichsev, uvasu el ha'kayanim alavim ve'el ha'shoifet. And that's a reference to the Kohen Gadol. Ibadu de asked the kasha. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov bechad polig or betati polig. So Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, we just quoted this brisa. Now, does he argue with our Mishnah with regard to 2 items, or only with regard to 1 item? B'melech v'kohen gadol polig, havav Sanhedrin ikra Reb Yehuda ikra Reb Shimon. Does he argue with our Mishnah with regard to the melech v'kohen gadol, that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says that a king and a kohen gadol must participate, and our Mishnah does not say anything about that? So Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov argues about that. But when he says that a Sanhedrin is required, maybe he agrees with our Mishnah. Either he holds like Reb Yehuda or Reb Shimon, that when he says Sanhedrin, it means either 3 or 5 judges from the Sanhedrin. Or perhaps, but Sanhedrin ami polig, domer kula Sanhedre ba'inon. Or maybe Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov argues also with regard to the Sanhedrin, and he holds that the entire Sanhedrin must go and participate in the Egla Arufa procedure. That's the question. Does Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov say that the entire Sanhedrin must go? Unlike Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon who say either 3 or 5, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov maybe holds the entire Sanhedrin must go. Amr of Yosef, Tashma. So Rav Yosef, come here. Mitzvah base Pagi v'imra alein. This is talking about a Zakin Mamre. A Zakin Mamre is a fellow, it's basically a rabbi, I guess, who paskins unlike how the Sanhedrin paskins. And basically, if he continues to paskin that way, we kill him. It's a capital offense, that, right? I guess maybe that's also how we kind of like preserve Torah Shabbal Peh, Kilu, maybe also. Because imagine you have different, Sanhedrin says this, but this renegade rabbi is saying something else. You have machlekes, right? It was so important for so long to avoid machlekes. Right? It was such a big deal once there started to be machlekes in between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, because all of a sudden, traditions were being splintered. Maybe that's why Zaken Mamre is so important. But be'etzim, so the Zaken Mamre process is that he comes to Yerushalayim and he goes to the Lishkas HaGozis, where the Sanhedrin Gedola is, and he tells them his psak. And he makes his argument for why he holds his way. And the Sanhedrin Gedola and the Lishkas HaGozis, they deliberate, and if they disagree with him, they issue a warning. And they say, look, we don't agree with you. You must paskin, you must rule like we rule. And if you don't, you'll be chayiv misa. And if he goes home and he continues to paskin in his renegade way, well, then he's going to be chayiv misa, and he goes to a bezdin of 23, and he's chayiv misa like any other chiyuv misa. So now, but the important part is that stage 1 is with the Sanhedrin Gedola. He has to go to the Lishkas HaGozis and explain his position, and if they still disagree with him, they basically say, hey, you need to toe the line. That is with the Sanhedrin Gedola. Now, says Rav Yosef. Where am I? Rav Yosef Tashma coming here mitzona base pagi. So if the Zaken Mamre is coming to Yerushalayim to make his case with the Sanhedrin Gedola, and Itaka finds them outside of the Lishkas HaGozis, somewhere else in Yerushalayim outside of the Lishkas HaGozis, v'himra alein, and he explains his position, and they disagree. So Yachol Te'amr also Amra. Is it possible that then when he goes and continues to paskin in his renegade manner, he will be chayiv misa? It says no, he needs to go to the place, to the Lishkas HaGozis. That davka, the deliberations must be in the Lishkas HaGozis, not anywhere else in Yerushalayim, and therefore he would not be chayiv misa in this case. Now, the only issue is that they simply were not in the Lishkas HaGozis, right? Because we're saying the whole reason why he's not chayiv misa is because when he made his case to Sanhedrin, they were outside of Lishkas HaGozis, and they must be in the Lishkas HaGozis. Therefore, he is not going to be chayiv misa. So the nofukam. Now, how much? So when we're saying that he bumped into the Sanhedrin outside of Lishkas HaGozis, how much of the Sanhedrin did he encounter? If you're going to tell me it was only part of the Sanhedrin, right? Like Rabbi Yehuda well, one second. No, forget it. If it was only part of the Sanhedrin and he made his case and they said we disagree, well, of course he would not be chayiv misa, not because they were outside of Lishkas Hagazis, but simply because if it was only part of the Sanhedrin, maybe those who were still in the Sanhedrin agreed with him. So how can we kill him based on the fact that he went against this sort of subset of the Sanhedrin? Maybe those who were still in the Lishkas Hagazis would have agreed with him, so of course we can't kill him. We don't know for sure that he was going against the will of the Sanhedrin. But again, Dinafu Kama, how many of them had left the Lishkas Hagazis? Ilim Miktzos, and if you're going to tell me part of them, Dumahanach Dika Gavoy, Kaimikavasi. Well, obviously we can't kill him because maybe those who were still in the Lishkas Hagazis agreed with him. And we're saying the only reason why we don't kill him is because they were outside of the Lishkas Hagazis. But here there's an additional reason, because he only encountered part of the Sanhedrin. So the Pshita Nafukulu must be that he encountered the entire Sanhedrin. However, because they were outside of Lishkas Hagazis, he's not Chayiv Misa. So Lamai, now why would the entire Sanhedrin have left the Lishkas Hagazis? If it's because for fun, they're going out for they like to go out for lunch once a week, so they all left to go for lunch. You can't do that. Can they all just leave the Lishkas Hagazis like that? Which we learn out, I believe, means that there always needs to be at least 23, if I'm not mistaken, judges still in the Lishkas Hagazis. So you can't just take the entire Sanhedrin out of the Lishkas Hagazis. So the Pshita L'Dvar Mitzvah must be that there was good reason why the entire Sanhedrin was outside of the Lishkas Hagazis, because they were going to do a mitzvah. Hey Chidami, which mitzvah were they going to do? La'av l'medidas egla, Reb Eliezer ben Yaakov he, is it not that they left the Lishkas Hagazis to do a mitzvah, the mitzvah of Egla Arufa? And this brisa is the view of Reb Eliezer ben Yaakov, that the entire Sanhedrin is required for the Egla Arufa. So Reb Shimon and Reb Yehuda would say 3 or 5 respectively. Reb Eliezer ben Yaakov says the entire Sanhedrin, and he's the author of this brisa where we see that the entire Sanhedrin left the Lishkas Hagazis because they're going to do Egla Arufa. Right, so Abaye suggests to Rav Yosef not necessarily lo kigon sheyotzu lo sefalir v'al alazaris. You could say that the entire Sanhedrin left the Lishkas Hagazis in order to add on to Yerushalayim, or to add on to the sanctuary of the temple. As we learned in our Mishnah, we learned it on Daf. Oh, did we not learn it on Daf Beis? I guess not. Oh yeah, we did learn on Daf Beis. In Mosifin ala Ir v'ala Azoris ela bebezdin shel shub be'echad. That to add on to Yerushalayim or to the sanctuary, it requires the bezdin of 71. So Abaye argues that you could say that it's not that the entire Sanhedrin is necessary for Egla Arufa. You could say the entire Sanhedrin left in order to add on to Yerushalayim or to the sanctuary. Tani Kavasa to Rav Yosef. We do, however, have a brisa supporting Rav Yosef, Mitzoin Abeis Pagi, that if the Zokin Mamre found the Sanhedrin outside of the Lishkas Hagazis but in Yerushalayim, Vimra Alein, and then he made his case, and they said, hey, we don't agree with you, and then he went and paskined his way anyways. And why did he bump into the Sanhedrin outside of Lishkas Hagazis? For example, they went to measure the Egla Arufa, or alternatively to add on to Yerushalayim or onto the sanctuaries. Yachol Shetei Amra Amra. Is it possible that the Zaken Mamre would be considered a Zaken Mamre in Chayiv Misa? Tamlom v'kam tavalisa lamakom. Lamach makom goyim says no. V'kam tavalisa lamakom. You have to go to Lishkas Hagazis. This was outside of Lishkas Hagazis. Therefore, he is going to be Potter. So we see in this brisa that the entire Sanhedrin was outside of Lishkas Hagazis in order to do Egla Arufa. Whose opinion is that? It must be Reb Eliezer ben Yaakov. So it must be that Reb Eliezer ben Yaakov argues with regard to the Sanhedrin as well, and says that the entire Sanhedrin must go and participate in Egla Arufa, not just 3 or 5 like Reb Yehuda and Reb Shimon respectively. Okay, the Mishnah had said Neter Ravai u'Maiser Sheni. So Neter Ravai is right. So the first 3 years of a fruit tree, the fruits are osir, they are orla. On year 4, they are what's called neter avai. You have to bring them to Yerushalayim, or you could bring their value to Yerushalayim and spend the money in Yerushalayim. Same thing with Meiser Sheni, right? The second tithe on year 1, 2, 4, and 5, you bring it to Yerushalayim, or their money, or their value. Shein dam avidu. Now, if you don't know the value of the neter avai or the Meiser Sheni, bishlosha. So you need 3 in order to evaluate it and give the accurate value. What is Meiser Sheni that you don't know its value? Peris she'er kivu, for example, rotten fruits. V'ayin she'ikrim, or wine that has turned to vinegar. Umoshe echlidu, or money that has gotten all rusty. When you have Meiser Sheni that you don't know its value, podin also b'shlosha lekuches. So you have to be poded with 3 business people who understand the values of such things, right? Maybe fruit merchants who understand how much a fruit costs and what a rot, and what implications rot has for its value. But not 3 that are not in such a business that don't really know. I feel Nachri man. You can even have a Nachri be one of them. It just needs to be somebody who knows. I feel Echad man Bailim, even if one of them was the owner of the Meiser Sheni itself. That's fine. But Rabbi Yirmiyah Shlosha Matilin Toch Echad Kis Echad Mau. Rabbi Yirmiyah asks, what if you have 3 people who be'etzim share the same bank account? Maybe you have 3 partners in a business or something, and therefore is it that you're not really getting 3 separate opinions? Maybe they kind of view things the same way. Well, we say that a husband and his 2 wives can be podeh meiser sheni shein dam v'viduin. So we see that even though they're basically all the same household, they can come together to be podeh meiser sheni shein dam v'viduin. So it would seem like 3 people sharing an account is fine. But Dilma can go with Papa Vas Abasura, but maybe actually it's like a Papa and Abasura, Bas Abasura, meaning a Papa and his wife, where he didn't support her. She worked and made her own money and supported herself, which was an option that we discussed in Masechet Ksubis. Hekdeshos bishlosha. So he said that Hekdeshos are with 3 judges. Be'etzim Hekdesh, which is metaltlin, right? If a person is makdish, chveisnish, he's makdish. I don't know. He's makdish. I don't know. What does a person want to be makdish? He's makdish. He's makdish tuna fish to the Beis Hamikdash. How beautiful! He's makdish a can of tuna fish to the Beis Hamikdash. So now we have to evaluate what's the value of this can of tuna fish. So 3 judges. We need 3 for that. I don't really want to talk about tuna fish, but you're makdish metaltlin. So Masnizin Doloki Aitana. So our Mishnah that says that you would need 3 judges is unlike the following Tana. The Tana that we learned in Rabbi ben Yaakov says Rabbi ben Yaakov afilu tzinor shel hektish. Even just like some kind of fork that's used for like spinning gold or something. Tzricha asara b'nei adam liftosa. You need 10, not 3, to redeem it. Says a Papa Tabai, Bishlam Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Dharma Kishmul says a Papa Tabai. I understand Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov's opinion, who says that you need 10 for metaltlin of hektish. It's like Shmuel says. Dharma Shmuel says Asar ke'anim ksuvim b'parsha. Shmuel points out that in the parsha of Hekdeshos, it says koyin 10 times. We're going to learn more about that, but it says koyin 10 times, and be'etzem that'll teach us that. Right, so it says by arochin it says 3 times, and by hektish of an animal and hektish of property by an animal another 3 times, by property 4 times. So 3, 3, and 4 is 10. So it says it 10 times. So it says Shmuel, it says 10 times koyin in the parsha. So I understand why Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov would say that you need 10 to redeem it, because by Hekdeshus you need 10. But where do the rabbis come up with 3? If you're going to tell me, well, by hektish of an animal, it says 3. There you have it. So you only need 3 judges. You only need 3 to be podeh metaltlin of hektish, just like this animal. But then karkos dichsiv bu arba tiski b'arba. But if that's the case, that's fine. But then karkos of hektish, where it says koyin 4 times, all you should need is 4 to redeem that. If you can say, okay, fine, but aloma tnan, but our Mishnah says hakarkos tisha v'koyin, that you need 10. So I don't understand. If we're saying that, right, so let's go weiter. Elamai, so how do you explain why our Mishnah would say that karkos needs 10? The mishalme bu asar. Well, because hekdesh of karka is the final sort of segment of the hekdeshos. We had arochin, it says kohanim 3 times, and then it says by hekdesh of an animal another 3 times, and then it says by karkos 4 times. So because by karkos you already had 3 of arochin, 3 of behema, and now 4 of karkos, so you're up to 10. But if that's the svara, so that, and that's why you need 10 for karkos, well then by behema, by metaltlin of hektish, well you had 3 by arochin, and then another 3 by behema, so you should need 6. Right? Meaning if you're going based on each section, right, and therefore you're saying that's why metaltlin of hektish needs 3, because it says kohanim 3 times by behema, then you should only need 4 for karka, because it says kohanim 4 times by karka. But we say in the Mishnah that you need 10. Why do you need 10? Well, because you need 3 for, it says 3 by arochin, another 3 by behema, which is 6, and then another 4 by karka, so now you're up to 10. But based on that, where you're kind of like adding up as it goes along, well then, for metaltlin, which is from behema, so you should have 3 by arochin, and then another 3 by behema, so you should need 6. Right? Like this is the mishavu shisa, the bo shisa, you should need 6. Kasha, we say it's taka kasha. We don't understand where the chachamim are coming up with 3 from, because if you're going to say that you need 3 by metaltlin, then you should need 4 by karka. If you're going to say, but if we say we need 10 by karka, then you should need 6 by metaltlin. So how do you come up with 3? That was daf Yudal of Masechta Sanhedrin. It was a very interesting daf. We talked about the machlokas between Reb Yehuda and Reb Shimon, both by smichas zekenim, by parlam davar tzibor, as well as by Egla Arufa. We saw that by Egla Arufa, there's the opinion of Rebbe Ben Yaakov, who says that you need the entire Sanhedrin. And then we got into the sugya of ordination, of ordaining rabbis, which was very, very interesting. And then we got into, and then we're going weiter in the Mishnah. We're already now up to daf, tomorrow we're going to learn daf tes vav of Masechta Sanhedrin. So we're already really getting further and further along into that large Mishnah that we were basically chopping up and exploring one piece at a time. So we're going to continue exploring, and within the next few days already, we will be done with the first Mishnah of Sanhedrin, which also means that we will be done soon with the first parak of Sanhedrin. Peace.